West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Now to the New York Times investigation that shows scores of former President Trump supporters unknowingly donated a lot more money to his campaign than they wanted to. The Times spoke with several Trump supporters who thought they'd signed up to send a single small dollar donation. Instead, they saw thousands and thousands of dollars siphoned from their accounts. With us now, let's bring in the author of that investigative piece, New York Times national political reporter, Shane Goldmacher. Shane, thank you so much for being here. Man, that story is heavy, and I mean it in this respect. When you started with the poor man who was in hospice, who wanted to contribute to Donald Trump, I'm sure he thought, you know what, I'm in hospice, but I really want to help this guy. I want to take part in this election. And once he did, suddenly more and more money kept getting withdrawn. He didn't know what to do. His family didn't know what to do. And that story was repeated time and time again. People having to shut down their bank accounts, people having to shut down their credit cards, people having all of their money siphoned out by the Trump campaign. Talk about it, if you will, and tell me, where did you first hear about this story? What got you on to this story?
Yeah, so at the center of this is the fact that the Trump campaign last fall, while facing their own financial hardships, began pre-checking boxes to start withdrawing donations from their supporters every single week until the election. And at one point, as the election year, they actually extended the date to December 14th, to weeks beyond the election. And so for their supporters, these pre-check boxes meant that you had to wade through a bunch of fine print. And by the way, that fine print became longer and more complicated as those finances worsened for the Trump campaign. And if you didn't uncheck those boxes, you were opted in. And that kind of design, which critics have called dark patterns, entrapped tons of supporters of President Trump. And you can see it based on a few things. A, there are the individuals impacted, which is, their stories can be really heartbreaking. But at scale, at the end of the campaign, or at the end of last year, rather, the Trump operation, so all their political committees, including with the Republican National Committee, had refunded more than 10% of every dollar that they had raised online through this website called WinRed, which is the donation processor for the Republican Party. 10% of every dollar they raised, that added up to more than $122 million. And to compare, the Biden operation had a refund rate of about 2.2%. So it's not even close to each other. And that rate was even higher at the end when they did these pre-check boxes every week. You saw this massive refund rate. There was a surge of phone calls to credit card companies where people said, I'm a victim of fraud. I don't know what happened here. Why is WinRed at the Trump campaign taking money out of my account every 7 days? People get their credit card bill a month later and they see if they give $200, they see 6 charges. It's $1,200. Or if you gave $20 3 times, you see 15 charges on your credit card.
And so it really, your article really helped explain some things that were happening and connected some dots. You had Donald Trump falling behind Joe Biden, not having the money that Biden had in the lead up to the actual election, being angry because there weren't ads up in Michigan, there weren't ads up in other swing states. So they started getting really aggressive and used these underhanded tactics that we continue to withdraw money from contributors' accounts. And so then they had, after the election, they had to, when he used the money, of course, this is so Trumpian, he used the money to get through Election Day. And then after the election, they had to start refunding money. So where does he get the money to do that? From all of his urges, all of his pleadings to his people to send money to stop the steal. Explain how that happened and how that worked out for Donald Trump.
So all these supporters of the president who had these donations recurred every week. This money went right into the Trump campaign's bank account. And again, they were struggling financially in October. They had millions of dollars more in television ads booked entering that last month than they had dollars on hand. Now, after the election, they began refunding more and more of these money. People got their credit card bill. Let's say you were opted into this every week thing at the beginning of October. You got your credit card bill in early November. You say, hey, what is this? You'd call, you'd ask for a refund. And in fairness, the Win Red and the Trump campaign did, for the most part, give people refunds when they asked for them. But when they did, that meant a bunch of money coming back out of the Trump campaign coffers. So if you look after Election Day, while the president was making these charges, these unfounded charges that this election was stolen from him, he was raising tens of millions of dollars from his supporters. Far more of that money went to paying off refunds than it did to the legal fight that he was engaged in November and December. And that's a big deal, right? This is how his supporters were told to give money after the election, and this is how it was actually spent.
It is Monday, the 5th of April of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. It's the day after Easter. Indeed. Are there any leftovers? Well, of course there are. No one can eat that much. Especially with a crowd of family. Yes, we did have a crowd of family, but we've gotten our COVID shots. My mom, unfortunately, was feeling a little under the weather, so did not make it across town to go to my sister's house for Easter Sunday festivities. But we did bring her back a plate, and she liked it. She's just not feeling too well. There's reasons other than just getting old. Well, I guess a lot of the ailments are because she's old. Went in for an MRI, and unfortunately she does have a degenerative disc. So that's where a lot of her, well, I call it pain. Other people call it discomfort. Well, she's painfully in discomfort and not one to want to take the drugs that knock you on your butt. So her idea of taking drugs is, a Tylenol. So trying to get her to take something a little bit stronger, it will help. She's not going to get addicted. I keep telling her, don't worry about it. You're not going to get addicted. I mean, she's almost 84. Please let her just alleviate the pain. So we'll see what's going to go on. I suspect because of her age, they're not going to put her under the knife because of, the risk involved. And maybe a spinal block of some sort might help. And I've spoken with a few folks in the medical community, my sister being one of them since she is a registered nurse. So that's one of the strategies they could use. And there's a few others too, short of having an operation. I just wish that they would give us the lizard gene so we could grow new shock absorbers in our discs, in our spinal column. And how about a new appendage here and there? I'd be happy with just the cartilage being regenerated. I'd be really happy with that. But I guess we're a ways off from that medical technology, at least for us. Yeah, at least. So, yeah, I did get my second shot of Pfizer on Saturday. Felt a little run down on Saturday. Now, once again, I don't know if it's because of how much I was doing during the week. But, I was kind of lethargic, pretty run down. I slept quite a bit. And then on Saturday night, early Sunday morning, then my arm felt where they gave me the injection. Then my arm felt like somebody had pounded on my or my arm with like a punch, a fist or some sort of pointy object, a dull pointy object like the end of a baseball bat. Not hitting you with the baseball bat in the baseball bat fashion, but, poking you with it really hard a few times. It was noticeable. And then about the time I woke up, which wasn't really late, I mean, it was still around 6 local time, it did start alleviating somewhat. I still feel it somewhat, but boy, overnight, it felt like someone punched it really hard a half a dozen or more times. So that's something that I wouldn't trade that away. It wasn't so bad that I wouldn't ever want the shot. But I would say it might be wise to consider that you might need a couple of days. You might. I was able to do quite a bit out in the yard and the gardens because it is quite overgrown and messy from the wintertime and got to get it ready to plant vegetables because I like those. I like to eat what I grow. There's some beauty in the beauty of just, landscaping flowers too. But, I like to grow a few things that you can eat as well. Anyway, I was able to get some work done in the yard until, mid-afternoon. And then it started hitting me and I went and took a nap. And that was a lot longer nap than I normally take, or siesta, or whatever you want to call it. Just a little backstory. I used to not ever take a nap. Who takes a nap in America? Until I spent some considerable time in Europe when everybody takes a nap in the afternoon, a siesta, mostly because it's so god-awful hot. You got to get inside where it's cool. And then, people stay up a bit later, and, they might get up a little earlier, considering how late they sometimes stay up. Dinner's a little bit later, sort of thing. Shops are open later. In Spain, geez, you don't start eating till about 1 o'clock in the morning. So, yeah, that's how it is. Anyway, I embraced the nap. And one doesn't need hours, though it is set aside for such in Europe, parts of Europe. But, 20 minutes, 45 minutes can be a rejuvenating amount of time. But Saturday, I slept considerably longer than a half hour to 45 minutes. And then yesterday, I started feeling a little bit better after a nap. The dinner and the Easter egg hunt for my nieces and nephew, grandnieces and grandnephews, started about 3 to 4 around there, and then we had an early dinner, and it was good, of course, because my sister and my niece-in-law, I guess she'd be my niece-in-law, are really good cooks, and so we had that, and I was feeling okay. I did take a little bit of a nap before that time, around noonish. So just to reiterate, you might want to set a couple of days when you get your shot, especially the second one. The first one, I felt a little lethargic, but the next day I was okay. And I guess I would say the same with the second shot. But I did find that sleep had what was part of the recuperation part as well. So be prepared. And some people don't have any issues. I would say that some people will just like work through the side effects, and they might be a little queasy or a little bit lethargic or tired, but they can just work through it. I found that it was just better to take a nap. Worked for me. Anyway, lots happened over the weekend. Now, we all know about the Blockbuster story with Trump and his recurring donation scam. And that was what we, put a little bit of a punctuation point on at the top of the show. Though there is that 60 Minutes expose as well of Ron DeSantis down there in Florida with his pay-to-play scheme to get the COVID shots that were set aside for, first responders, firemen, nurses, cops. And I guess he was taking political, quote, quote, donations from rich fat cats, and then he would have them jump the line and get the vaccine that was set aside for first responders and old people, because that's how they do it in Florida. They don't care. I mean, let's look at that radioactive phosphorus reservoir. Yeah, I know, phosphorus, asphalt of sorts, but it's still radioactive. That's what happens when you don't have regulation, and now that reservoir is going to collapse, and all that radioactive phosphorus will be inundating the neighborhoods around, which are a lot of Everglade things, all the way to the ocean. Jesus, thanks a lot, Ron DeSantis in Florida. Yeah, businesses move there because they're not regulated. Well, no shit, Sherlock. I like my businesses regulated. I had a friend who had a machine shop, and he told me that if there weren't EPA laws that prevented him from dumping the solvents and oily residue that we would use or would come out of the manufacturing process they were doing in this machine shop, if there was no laws preventing them from dumping that just in the gutter and the storm drains, they would be doing it. And they had been doing it. That's why there were laws against it after a while. Because people didn't take it on themselves to not dump the poison into the waterways. Government had to step in because the people who really wanted to stop didn't have any power of the gun, because we live in a representative democracy and we want to be able to have these decisions and these, shall we say, responsible actions enforced by a third party, and that's what we call government. I don't need to go down to the illicit mining operation and tell them, hey, you guys are breaking the law and you got to stop. No, I have a cop do that. Okay? So I know they want to turn it into some sort of anarchy with warlords and all of that. I don't. I like my civilization. I don't like the warlord construct. I really hate it. And not because I don't think that I would not be a warlord. I'm afraid I would. Jeez. Where are people's morality? Well, not any elevation from Easter Sunday, apparently. Yeah, look at Donald Trump. He's supposed to be the great religious icon on earth to a lot of these white racist evangelicals, and I've got to put the emphasis on white evangelicals. When we banter the term evangelical around, we have to be certain that we know we're talking about white evangelicals. They're a breed unto themselves. They are, let's not implicate any other evangelicals, especially the black evangelical church, within the crazy of evangelical, okay? Because the crazy of evangelical, I gotta say, is wholly the domain of white racist Protestants. It always has, always will. Look at the history. Anyway, all sorts of their issues were brought up over the weekend. And look, we got this guy, Donald Trump, who they look upon as being the embodiment of God on earth, of all things. But, they're a heretic belief system anyway, so what do you expect? And I'm a Catholic, so I'm able to call them heretics. If you aren't Catholic, you're a heretic. It's easy. It's an easy assessment to make. Are you a Catholic? No. Well, then you're a heretic. And then there are heretics within the Catholic Church. Let's be clear. Like, Opus Dei. That's another story for another day. So we have these white evangelicals propping up Trump as being the embodiment of God on earth, heaven forbid. No pun intended. And he comes out with his Easter proclamation, which was another whine fest about how the election was stolen from him and these radical leftists are going to destroy America. And then he sums up with, other than that, Happy Easter. And the press is upset that Joe goes to Mass too much. Fancy that. Well, then, because I guess they were bored, there's this picture of Dr. Jill getting off of I think it's Air Force One. Should be. And boy, she looks pretty good. She knows how to dress. I wonder who her wardrobe advisor is, because that looked like some nice couture that she was wearing. And I don't know. We had a pole dancer, soft porn erotica star, as a first lady. And if you said anything, any kind of criticism about her wardrobe, her looks, or her past, the right just came down hard on you and called you a sexist. You sexist. You hateful, violent leftist. You're a sexist. Really? So every time, any kind of criticism, when Melania did that stupid garden and she was dressed up like Mr. Green Jeans, and we made fun of that outfit like she's ever done gardening in her life, or wore that outfit, we were called sexist. The hateful left, they're sexist. Boy, did they come down hard on Dr. Jill. Said she was wearing fishnet stockings, like there's something wrong with that. I know, I gotta tell you, fishnet stockings have a seam up the back. She was wearing patterned tights, all right? Get a clue. It wasn't a hoax. It wasn't fake. It wasn't stolen, and those are not fishnets. They always lie. But boy, were they a titter. They've suddenly become puritanical. In the midst of Matt Gaetz, and that, I don't know what to call it, but it is sick. Yes, it is. I don't know what is going on with that guy. You know who he always has reminded me of? Connie's first husband in The Godfather. You know, the weasel guy? That son he beats the crap out of. That's who Matt Gaetz has always reminded me of. Well, you can learn everything in the movies, can't you? Yes, you can. Well, it was such a great weekend, and so happy Easter to you. We have, what now? What do we have now to look forward to? Well, how about some nicer weather, though I still wish that we could get more snowpack. I fear we're going to have some dry times, and it looked like we were having our reservoirs filled and a sizable snowpack, and it looked like we would have the proverbial April showers so that we can have those May flowers. And all these forecasts of considerable rain has now been revised to much drier climes. Oh, darn it. So we'll keep our fingers crossed, and maybe some actual storms will generate and give us the needed precipitation that we need. Yes, we do. What's on the rest of the menu here? In the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays, by the way. Asian American volunteers are organizing to protect elders in the wake of violent racist attacks. Wisconsin is seeking $145,000 in legal fees for Trump's bad faith election lawsuit. And in a 9-0 ruling, the Supreme Court will permit the FCC to loosen cross-platform media ownership rules. There are some who say because of the power of electronic media, the computer and the internet and Google and all that, this ruling is good because of the power of social media and all of that technology, and that newspapers and others, local media, are suffering because of it. But really, I got to say, I think it really benefits Sinclair. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Kosovo elected a new president, who is the Balkan nation's second female leader in the post-war period. Only the second. And a year-long fact-finding probe has uncovered hundreds of French sports figures accused of sexual violence. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. If you would then look across the page to the left, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, there is the link to our Patreon site. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, your recurring patronage allows us to pay our bills. And we have found over the last 10 years, yes, we are celebrating our 10th year anniversary. We have found over the last 10 years that if you pay your bills, you can fly under the radar and continue doing this resistance radio that we've been doing for the last 10 years. Happy birthday to us. If you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds to us once a month, we mix that with the dollars that we pull out of our own wallets, and we pay those bills, and we fly under that radar, and we have you to thank. I also want to mention we've had some people increase their monthly patronage in these perilous times, and I can't tell you how much it helps, because we are still in perilous times. And thank you for your generosity. It really is so helpful. And I'll get a personal note through the Patreon site that allows you to do that real soon. I've just been a little busy, and I was a little, as I said, a little under the weather from that second COVID shot, but I feel so much better now. Okay, if you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that and a whole lot more. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, because I do post the show notes and links diary on Daily Close about 10 minutes before showtime. Get that posted up on social media platforms. And Twitter is probably the one that I do it first. Yes, it is. I do that first. And then the other ones I do second. You know who they are. Second and third and fourth, wherever. But you know who the second one might be. Did you hear that Zuckerberg said he wasn't going to have Facebook make any donations, after the election? And then they donated a sizable amount of money to some Republican political action committee that was working to suppress the vote. What's up with Zuckerberg? Man! Anyway, follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays, is by the Associated Press, but by way of the American Independent. Fed up with the incessant attacks on Asian Americans, Stan Lee recently started voluntarily patrolling San Francisco's Chinatown. So when the 53-year-old fire lieutenant saw a video of a New York City woman brutally beaten, he did not have to guess how his fellow volunteers, other Asian American firefighters, were taking it. "I'm pretty sure they're all steamed like I am," said Lee, who is Chinese American. It's personal. It could have been our aunt, or our mom, or our grandma. The vicious assault of a 65-year-old woman who now turns out is a Filipina-American woman. While walking to church in the daytime this week last week, near New York Times Square has heightened already palpable levels of outrage over anti-Asian attacks that escalated with the pandemic. New York police say the assailant yelled racial slurs at the Filipina-American woman and told her, "You don't belong here." The video quickly drew millions of views along with widespread condemnation, not just for the heinous nature, but the seemingly indifferent bystanders. The assailant was arrested and charged Wednesday last with hate crimes. I should mention that the 65-year-old woman's daughter said that there was a guy out there yelling, and he was pretty small himself, the daughter said, and a non-Asian, at the guy to stop and did intervene in their way. And so that is not ever mentioned, but the daughter did mention that. What was maddening is that it was done in front of, it looks like maybe a hotel, and the security door guys saw what was going on. And then in this security video, which is their video, their security staff closes the door while the lady's getting head stomped out there on the pavement. And the 911 calls did not come from that establishment. Hence, it looks like we're going to need some patrols. Now, I would wish that it's just not Asian Americans who are manning these patrols. Every single one of us should be doing so. Not just Asian American firefighters. But I lived in San Francisco, and I got to tell you, there's a lot of racism there, and it's very endemic, not only in the fire department, but the police department as well. So now we have civilian patrols. I guess you could call it a neighborhood watch. Brendan Pearson of Reuters brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Wisconsin's Democratic Governor Tony Evers has asked a federal judge to order Donald Trump to cover $145,000 in legal fees the state spent to defend against the former Republican president's unsuccessful effort to overturn his 2020 election results. In a filing in Milwaukee federal court, Evers' lawyers said there was no doubt that Trump and his attorneys brought and litigated this lawsuit in bad faith. Unconscionably, they did so for the purpose of sowing doubt about the legitimacy of the 2020 presidential election, with a goal of disenfranchising nearly 3.3 million Wisconsin voters in order to secure the presidency, contrary to the majority will. The lawsuit, one of dozens Trump filed in courts around the country, had claimed that alleged flaws in Wisconsin's election procedures meant the results of its presidential election, which awarded the state's 10 electoral votes to Democratic President Joe Biden, should be thrown out. "We deny the claim," said William Bach, a lawyer representing Trump in the case. "They're attacking in the pleadings my motives and the motives of my partners, of which they know nothing. The statements about our motives were absolutely false." Bach said he would respond to the motion within 21 days. Andrew Chung and David Shepardson of Reuters brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. The U.S. Supreme Court allowed the Federal Communication Commission to loosen local media ownership restrictions, handing a victory to broadcasters in a ruling that could facilitate industry consolidation as consumers increasingly move online. In a 9-0 ruling authored by Justice Brett Kavanaugh, I guess they gave him another case of beer. The justices overturned a lower court decision that had blocked the FCC's repeal of some media ownership regulations in a 2017 filing for failing to consider the effects on ownership by racial minorities and women. Critics of the industry have said further consolidations could limit media choices for consumers. And it does. That's the whole reason they want to do it. The justices acted in appeals by the FCC, companies including News Corp, Fox Corp, Sinclair Broadcast Group, Inc., and the National Association of Broadcasters. The associations for other broadcast networks, local affiliates, including ABC, NBC, and CBS, backed the appeals, arguing that consolidation would help ensure the economic survival of local television amid heavy competition from Internet companies that provide video content. Broadcast television stations have said they are increasingly losing advertising dollars to digital platforms. In 2017, the FCC, then led by Republicans during former President Donald Trump's administration, voted to eliminate a ban in place since 1975 on cross-ownership of a newspaper and TV station in a major market. It also voted to make it easier for media companies to buy additional TV stations in the same market and for companies to buy additional radio stations in some markets. Guess what? Here in Southern Oregon, Sinclair owns all the local stations. And you think you're watching NBC, but you're watching Sinclair. You think you're watching CBS, but you're watching Sinclair. You think you're watching ABC. NBC, CBS. It doesn't matter. You're watching Sinclair. And now when you turn on the radio station, which is what Sinclair came out of because they had bought up all the church radio stations in America, and then they were precluded from buying any other radio stations because they had matched their limit. So they had to I don't know, radio's just going so bad because of all this newfangled TV stuff, cable TV. So they gave Sinclair a break on that. And now they get to buy up all the rest of the radio stations that aren't controlled by right-wing media and their dark money billionaire benefactors. Well, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Nobody to Love. Hovering between black comedy, crime noir, and exposé, we have the new one I Care a Lot, with the award-winning Rosamund Pike nailing the lead as the nefarious Marla. Marla is a businesswoman, her business being having herself appointed by the court as a guardian for older people who allegedly can't care for themselves. With corrupt legal and medical accomplices and an apathetic court, she then converts the older people's assets into her own. She makes it look easy. This would be the exposé component I mentioned, as what you see here isn't that far from reality. Marla's plans proceed swimmingly until she picks the wrong Mark, a Jennifer Peterson, played by Diane Weist, who has a connection connection to a serious Russian mobster brought off by none other than Peter Dinklage. From this point, we get a smart, if roadrunner-ish, back-and-forth escalation of legal threats, plots and ploys, and lots of violence. Not to take anything away from Dinklage's performance, but we've seen this character before. Pike's Marla, though, not so much. She's a female Gordon Gekko, confidently spouting life and business philosophies like his, but with a toxic blend of warped feminism. In fact, it's been proposed that her character may be loosely based on either, or a mashup of, Facebook's Sheryl Sandberg of Lean In fame, and/or #girlbosses Sophia Amoruso, the latter of whom, for a while at least, seemed to have a haircut and wardrobe similar to Marla's. Notably, Sheryl and Sophia have fallen from grace. A more cinematic comeuppance awaits Marla. I Care a Lot juxtaposes exploitative capitalism and straight-up crime, and it's a ride to be sure, but in one this cynical, don't look for anyone to root for. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Colorectal cancer is the number 2 cancer killer of men and women in the United States, but it is preventable. Early on, colorectal cancer typically has no symptoms. It starts with a precancerous polyp or abnormal growth in the colon, which can be removed without surgery. Several tests are available to find these polyps, so they can be removed before they turn into cancer. Screening also finds colorectal cancer early when treatment works best. Recommended screening for adults at average risk begins at age 50 and continues until age 75. Learn about screening test options and find out which tests are covered by insurance. Talk to your healthcare provider about when you should be screened and discuss the best tests for you. For more information about colorectal cancer prevention, please visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
The past year proves that a lot of conventional economic wisdom is neither true nor wise. For example, we don't have the money. The power elites tell us it would be nice to do the big-ticket reforms America needs, but the money just isn't there. Then a pandemic slammed into America, and suddenly trillions of dollars gushed out of Washington for everything from subsidizing meat packers to developing vaccines, revealing that the money is there. We can't increase the federal debt. Yet, Trump and the Republican Congress didn't hesitate to shove the national debt through the roof in 2017 to let a few corporations and billionaires pocket a $1 trillion tax giveaway. So, if those drunken spenders can use federal borrowing to make the likes of Amazon and Zuckerberg richer, we can borrow funds for such productive national needs as infrastructure investment and quality education for all. The rich are the makers who contribute the most to society. This silly myth quickly melted right in front of us as soon as Senor Coronavirus arrived, making plain that the most valuable people are nurses, grocery clerks, teachers, postal employees, and millions of other mostly low-wage people. So let's capitalize on the moment to demand policies that reward these grassroots makers instead of Wall Street's billionaire takers. Tax cuts drive economic growth for all. They always claim that freeing corporations from the burden of taxes will encourage CEOs to invest in worker productivity, and voila, wages will miraculously rise. This scam has never worked for anyone but the scammers, and it's now obvious to the great majority of workers that the way to increase wages, is to increase wages. This is Jim Hightower saying, percolate up economics works, trickle down does not. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is brought to you by our new Lowdown Happy Hour, now live streaming on Facebook from the Chat and Chew Cafe. With kick-ass political spark plugs like Beto O'Rourke, musical champions like Marcia Ball, and grassroots change makers like the New Georgia Project and People's Action, the Lowdown Happy Hour is reaching out to you to help put the move in movement. So grab a libation and join the fun. Details at hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. Tomorrow marks the anniversary of the Upper Big Branch mine disaster. This is the first of 2 parts commemorating that moment in labor history. The year was 2010. A massive explosion ripped through Massey Energy's mine in Raleigh County, West Virginia. The explosion killed 29 miners. It was the deadliest in decades. The explosion at the Upper Big Branch mine revealed the ruthlessness of profit-driven mine executives. Raking in $104 million in profit the year before, they callously insisted the explosion had been an act of God. The explosion also exposed the immense pressure on federal and state regulators to look the other way or go easy on enforcement. And it demonstrated just how deep the ties go between industry, regulators, and those in seats of political power. The Upper Big Branch mine explosion served as a testament to the increasingly unsafe and non-union nature of the industry. 35 years ago, 95% of the state's mines were unionized. Walkouts over health and safety were common. Now, less than 25% are. And the workers risk their livelihoods if they dare to speak up about safety. Autopsies of those killed in the explosion revealed that over 70% of them were found to have had black lung disease, an entirely preventable disease with proper ventilation. Massey executives routinely violated safety rules as a cost of doing business. American University's detailed study of Massey's safety record for the years 2000 through 2010 concluded that no other U.S. coal company had a worse fatality record. A total of 54 workers, including those at the Upper Big Branch mine, had been killed during that time period. They also found that Massey had been cited for nearly 63,000 violations, including more than 25,000 considered significant and substantial. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2010. That was the day an explosion in the Upper Big Branch mine killed 29 miners. This is the second of 2 parts commemorating that disastrous moment in labor history. The accumulation of explosive methane gas was so pronounced that the mine had to be evacuated several times leading up to the disaster. A 126-page Governor's Independent Investigation Panel report detailed the systemic failures of safety systems and at governmental agencies charged with enforcing regulation. Lack of proper ventilation, adherence to rock dusting standards, and proper maintenance of machinery were main factors. The panel also held the Mine Safety and Health Administration responsible for disregarding the documented risk of methane outbursts at the mine, overlooking the deadly potential of a precarious ventilation system, neglecting to use its regulatory authority to force technological improvements, and allowing the U.S. mine safety system to atrophy. They determined that MSHA could have issued flagrant violation citations and had the authority to shut the mines down, but didn't. The report noted the cozy relations between mine owners, politicians, judges, and regulators. Specifically, the ease with which state mine officials move from employment with industry to government and back. Despised union-busting CEO Don Blankenship, who was tried and convicted to 1 year in jail, insisted his mines were safe. He cited 3 Sentinels of Safety Awards received from MSHA in 2009. These awards went to surface mining and coal processing plant operations. Blankenship even blamed MSHA for the explosion because the agency demanded changes in UBB's ventilation system. A union safety committee could have shut the mine down before methane gas and coal dust combined to cause the explosion, if only there had been a union.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin, weather from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 38 degrees Fahrenheit. What? Going to be a bit cooler than we were yesterday, which we were cooler than from the day before, only expecting a high of about 60 to 62, though very sunny, and winds will be out of the north at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies tonight with lows in the mid-30s. Winds out of the north at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Sunny skies tomorrow, though it will increase in temperature to around 70 to 72. Winds will be out of the north at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon have now increased, though these are not the updated current totals. Well, they are the current totals. The updated totals will come later today or early tomorrow. But since late Friday, since early Saturday, the numbers have increased to 9,321, and the confirmed deceased stands at 121. We are seeing another spike in infections. The UK variant is in the region. Thank you very much, maggots. Pollen is rated as none outside the window here in Rogue River proper, but I don't believe it. The air quality for the region is rated as good at 50 parts per million, and that I can attest to is true, though there has been some wildfire and structure fires. Which came first, we don't know. Yes, we do. The structure fire then started a little wildfire. And in the late afternoon, when the wind shifted, there has been some terrible smoke that put the air quality index for this local area into the moderate to high range. So we don't like that. We don't want these forest fires. Stop them. Don't let them come here. Tell them no. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.23 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles. And relative humidity is down to 65%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowdsources from around the world. London is 45 degrees and sunny. Oh, it's brisk. It looks like Paris is 44 and cloudy, though they do have a high wind and also a rain advisory, heavy rain and wind advisory. Rome is 61 and sunny. All the Paris steps in spring. Kyiv is 49 and fair. Kabul is 53 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 70 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 49 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 71 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees and cloudy. And New York is 57 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowdsources from around the world. Anonymous staff at the Associated Press bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. Lawmakers in Kosovo elected and swore in a new president yesterday, for a 5-year term, the Balkan nation's second female leader in the post-war period. The 120-seat parliament, which convened in an extraordinary session for 2 days, gave 71 votes for Vjosa Omani Sadru, the former parliament speaker, in the third round of voting, while 11 votes were invalid. 2 opposition parties and the ethnic Serb minority party boycotted the voting. In November, the 38-year-old temporarily replaced former President Hashim Thaçi, a guerrilla leader during Kosovo's war for independence from Serbia in the late 90s, who resigned after facing charges for war crimes and crimes against humanity at the special court based in The Hague. Osmani Sadru, post-war Kosovo's seventh president, and its second female one, had the backing of the left-wing self-determination movement, which was Kosovo's February 14 early election, who they won the election in a landslide. The party now holds the three top posts: the president, the speaker, and the prime minister. Osmani Sadru was the top vote-getter in that election. As president, she will largely have a ceremonial post as head of the state, but she also has a leading position in foreign policy and is the commander of the armed forces. Resuming normalization talks with former foe Serbia is a priority on her list, even though the government of Prime Minister Albin Kurti has said it's not high in its key goals. Kosovo became independent in 2008 after NATO intervened in 1999 to stop then Serbian strongman Milosevic's bloody crackdown on Albanian independence, and it is recognized by more than 100 countries, but not by Serbia or Serbian allies like Russia and China.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Angela Charlton of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A year-long nationwide French effort to uncover and combat sexual violence in sports has identified more than 400 coaches, teachers, and others suspected of abuse or covering it up. Most of the victims were under 15, according to data released on Friday by the Sports Ministry. The alleged abuse included sexual assault, harassment, or other violence. 60 people have faced criminal proceedings. More than 100 have been temporarily or permanently removed from their posts, and local investigations are underway into other cases, the ministry said. The abuse reached across the country and across the whole sector, with accusations targeting a total of 48 sports federations. Of those accused, 96% are men. Of the victims, 83% were women or girls, and 63% were under 15, the Sports Federation said, or the ministry said. The fact-finding probe was launched in February of 2020 after 10-time French skating champion Sarah Abitol said in a book that she was raped by Coach Gilles Bayer from 1990 to 92 when she was a teen. Bayer was handed preliminary charges of sexual assault, and the investigation is ongoing. In its statement, the ministry called Abitol's testimony a historic moment for French sport that raised awareness and has pushed authorities to crack down on abuse. A new law on tougher screening of sports educators, including volunteer coaches, went into effect last Friday, and the French government and sports federations have pledged to respond faster and more effectively to reports of abuse. And it's about time. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.